Detective Carver, we need to talk to you.
About what? Who's your supervisor?
For over a decade, Miles Carver was considered one of the best detectives in the South Bronx. What you're about to see destroys that reputation forever.
Detective, this isn't a
I
conversation.
don't care what it is. You don't have the right to approach me on precinct property.
Hands away from the belt, Detective.
I'm not moving my hands. Tell me who authorized it.
He said he was on the job. 13 years on the job. A gold shield. A badge that meant something, or was supposed to. What he didn't know, standing in that parking garage at 6:52 in the morning, was that the job had been watching him back. 22 queries, 9 robberies, 3 years. The Southern District of New York had been building the case for 16 months, and every single piece of evidence led to the same terminal ID. Detective Miles Dion Carver, 41st Precinct, South Bronx. 8 federal counts, $2.44 million in stolen cash and narcotics, 300 months in federal prison. This is how a 13-year decorated detective became the architect of the most brazen institutional betrayal in the history of his precinct. Let me ask you something. If you called 911 tonight, how confident are you that everyone in that chain is clean? Drop your honest answer in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. We cover the cases that don't make the front page. Miles Dion Carver was born in 1984 in the Morrisania section of the Bronx, 8 blocks from the 40th Precinct. His father drove MTA buses out of the Eastchester Depot for 31 years. His mother worked as a home health aide, picking up double shifts on weekends, sometimes 3 clients in a single day. They lived in a 2-bedroom on East 167th Street. Miles shared a room with his younger brother until he left for college. He was 16 years old when a man named Terrence, a neighbor, a father, someone Miles saw every day, was shot in front of the corner store on Caldwell Avenue. The case went unsolved. 2 years passed. No arrest. Miles watched his mother lock the front door at sundown for the next 18 months. He decided, somewhere in that silence, that he wanted to be the person who solved things. He attended Fordham University on a partial scholarship, graduating in 2006 with a degree in criminal justice. He worked nights at a FedEx hub on Bruckner Boulevard to cover tuition, $11.50 an hour, sorting packages until 2 in the morning. He graduated with $22,000 in debt. NYPD Police Academy, class of 2011. He finished 11th in a cohort of 214, training at 235 East 20th Street in Manhattan. He requested the 40th Precinct specifically. He knew the streets. He thought that mattered. His early performance evaluations read like a template for what the department was hoping to build. Strong situational awareness. Trusted by community contacts in high-tension encounters. Demonstrates initiative in gathering field intelligence. He was well liked at the precinct. He coached a youth flag football program 2 summers running at Franz Siegel Park. He showed up. He was promoted to detective 3rd grade in 2016. Narcotics intelligence. The promotion came with access to systems most officers never touched. The NYPD finest database, confidential informant records, active surveillance addresses, and most critically, the Mobile Command Unit Deployment Grid, a real-time map of where every patrol unit in a given sector was positioned at any given moment. He was trusted with that access because the job required it. 9 commendations by 2019. 1 departmental recognition for a major narcotics collar in the Mott Haven corridor. Salary with overtime, $127,000. In early 2020, he was reassigned to a joint task force tracking mid-level fentanyl distribution in the Melrose and Mott Haven corridors. The assignment gave him something he hadn't had before, a reason to query the deployment grid that no one would question. He could check which units were out. He could see the gaps. He could see exactly when and where the system was thinnest. The opportunity had arrived. He recognized it immediately. The NYPD Mobile Command Unit Deployment Grid is the operational nervous system of the borough. Every patrol unit in a given sector checks in at the start of shift and logs its position throughout. Supervisors can see, in real time, where coverage is concentrated and where it isn't. For detectives assigned to narcotics task forces, query access to the grid is not a privilege. It's a necessity. Coordinating a raid without knowing where patrol units are positioned is how operations fall apart. The access is a function of the job. The 40th Precinct sector covers roughly 1.3 square miles in the South Bronx. In 2022 alone, the precinct logged more than 4,400 incidents. The deployment grid runs constantly. At any given moment on a Friday night, a task force detective could pull up the sector display and see exactly where coverage was heavy and exactly where a 4-block window had gone quiet. The vulnerability was structural. Query logs were recorded, every access timestamped, every terminal ID noted. But those logs were passive. They were reviewed only when someone was already under investigation. No system cross-referenced grid queries against unrelated crime reports. No one asked which detectives were querying coverage in sectors with no active cases. The trust that made the system work was the same trust that made it exploitable. March 7, 2020. Carver had been building an intelligence file on a fentanyl distribution point on Melrose Avenue, a mid-level operation run out of a second-floor apartment. He was supposed to be developing a case. Instead, at 10:41 that night, he opened the mobile command unit display and confirmed a single patrol unit in the Melrose sector, positioned 3 blocks from the address. He picked up a prepaid phone bought for cash at a Fordham Road electronics shop and sent a voice message to Lamont Page. 4 men entered the apartment, $74,000 in cash and 900 grams of narcotics. 6 minutes. Nobody responded in time. Carver was logged into the department system from his home computer when it happened. A task force detective checking in remotely after hours. Routine enough that no supervisor gave it a second look. He drove to the precinct the next morning and filed a routine duty report. For the first 7 jobs, he never entered a location himself. He was the intelligence layer and nothing more. He identified targets through his CI files and task force surveillance data. He timed each robbery to a patrol coverage gap he could see on the grid in real time. He relayed sector positions to Page via burner in his own voice, typically within 15 minutes of the crew moving. The jobs were clean, too clean. They hit, they left, and the patrol units arrived to empty apartments. By mid-2021, Carver had taken cuts totaling north of $200,000, deposited in increments across accounts held by his mother and a cousin. The crew hit 5 more locations through 2021, each one timed to a grid gap, each one targeted through intelligence Carver had developed legitimately and then turned criminal. By the summer of 2022, the structure had shifted. Carver began attending robberies himself, masked, armed with an unregistered Glock 19. He was no longer the man behind the phone. He was inside the apartments. August 19th, 2022, East 156th Street. The crew hit a stash house connected to a distributor Carver had been surveilling for months. What no one accounted for was Bernadette Irby, a 44-year-old home health aide who had come to the building to check on an elderly client in the apartment directly next to the target. She stepped into the hallway at the wrong moment. She was struck with a firearm. Her left orbital socket was fractured in 2 places. She was hospitalized for 9 days. She would require 2 reconstructive surgeries. She had no connection to narcotics activity of any kind. The Bronx DA's office had flagged a pattern of suspiciously precise stash house hits in late 2021. Clean entries, minimal forensic trace, always in low coverage windows, no responding units ever arriving in time. An analyst wrote a memo. The memo went to a supervisor. It sat for 3 months without follow-up. By the time anyone looked at it again, the crew had hit 2 more locations. In January 2023, the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau launched a borough-wide data review of robbery patterns in the Bronx. The directive had come from the department's new crime analytics unit, a mandate to apply statistical pattern analysis to unsolved commercial robbery clusters. It was the kind of administrative exercise that generates reports and rarely generates arrests. Detective Sonia Tremaine was the IAB analyst assigned to the review. She had been with Internal Affairs for 6 years. She was methodical. She had no particular reason to suspect anyone at the start. She was simply doing the work. On February 2nd, 2023, 34 days into the review, Tremaine pulled the deployment grid query logs for the period spanning January 2020 through December 2022 and began cross-referencing them against the timestamps of high-value robbery incidents in the Melrose, Mott Haven, and Hunts Point corridors. She was looking for anything anomalous. She found it within the first pass. 9 robberies, 9 grid query windows, the same terminal ID appearing in the logs within 15 minutes of each incident. The terminal belonged to Detective Miles Dion Carver, badge 4471. She ran the numbers twice. Then she brought the file to her supervisor and requested an FBI consultation. An FBI data analyst from the SDNY calculated the probability of the correlation occurring by random chance at less than 0.3%. A parallel federal investigation opened the following week. Carver was not informed. His grid access was not revoked. They wanted to watch him. He made 3 more queries in the following month, each one logged. The search warrant was executed on March 14, 2023. Carver's department workstation, personal laptop, and Bronx apartment on Walton Avenue. FBI Special Agent Broderick Ashby led the search team. In a hollowed-out speaker cabinet in the bedroom closet, agents found 2 prepaid Motorola phones. One had been factory reset, wiped to blank. The other had not. On the second phone, investigators found 22 voice memos and 11 text messages. The voice memos were recorded in Carver's voice. Each was time-stamped. Each corresponded within 15 minutes to a robbery incident. The clearest, a message recorded at 9:12 p.m. on August 19, 2022, 11 minutes before the East 156th Street robbery. Carver's voice, unhurried, matter-of-fact, single unit, East 156, 3 blocks north, windows open. The financial investigation confirmed the pattern. $312,000 deposited across accounts held by Carver's mother and a cousin over 32 months. No tax return, no income source. The cousin cooperated within 48 hours. He identified the cash as coming from Carver directly, in envelopes, typically within days of a robbery. Lamont Page was arrested on March 22, 2023. He was facing a federal conspiracy charge that carried a mandatory minimum of 10 years. He retained counsel, received a proffer letter, and provided investigators with a full account within 5 days. He named all 5 crew members. He identified Carver's specific role in each of the 9 documented robberies. He described conversations in which Carver had relayed real-time patrol unit positions. He turned over the communication log from his own burner, which matched Carver's log message for message. Among the recovered messages, Carver, March 7, 2020, 10:41 p.m., 1 unit, Melrose Sector, Northwest. You've got time. Page, March 7, 2020, 10:43 p.m., copy. Carver, August 19, 2022, 9:12 p.m., windows open, East 156, single unit, 3 blocks north. Page, August 19, 2022, 9:28 p.m. Done. There was a problem. Carver, August 19, 2022, 9:29 p.m. Don't call me again tonight. Hector Fuentes had been a victim in a separate incident. His Melrose Avenue bodega was hit in February 2022. $41,000 in cash. He called 911. A 40th precinct officer arrived, took his statement, filed the report. It would be more than a year before Fuentes learned that a detective from the same precinct may have sent the crew to his door. Stories like this one don't make the front page. If you want accountability coverage every single week, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We don't let these cases disappear. September 11th, 2023, 6:52 in the morning. The parking garage beneath Carver's apartment building on Walton Avenue. He had parked on level 2. He came off the elevator in plain clothes, gym bag on one shoulder, coffee in the other hand, keys out. He was due at the precinct by 8. Broderick Ashby and 2 additional FBI agents came in from the east stairwell. Sonia Tremaine and 2 IAB officers came in from the vehicle ramp. They approached from 3 directions simultaneously. Ashby called his name first. Carver stopped. He processed the scene in a fraction of a second. The federal credentials, the positioning, the sheer number of people. He said the words most officers say when something like this happens to them. He was on the job. He was NYPD. There had to be some mistake, some miscommunication, some other explanation for why 5 people were converging on him in a parking garage before 7 in the morning. Ashby told him to put the bag down. Tremaine stepped forward. She named the 9 robberies. She named the 22 queries. She told him his voice was on the burner. There was a pause, the first real pause since he'd come off the elevator. When Carver spoke again, his voice had changed. Quieter, measured. He said, "Those were drug dealers. Nobody got hurt who wasn't already in that life." Confrontation dialogue. Ashby. "Detective Carver, federal agents, hands where we can see them." Carver. "Whoa, I'm on the job. I'm NYPD. What is this?" Ashby. "We know who you are, detective. Hands." Carver. "Whatever you think you have." Tremaine. 9 robberies, detective, the access logs, your voice on the burner." Carver. "Those were drug dealers. Nobody got hurt who wasn't already in that life." Ashby. "Bernadette Irby was a home health aide, detective." Carver's coffee cup dropped. It hit the concrete, bounced once, and rolled toward the drain in the center of the garage floor. He did not look at it. He did not look at anything in particular. He said, "I want a lawyer." Then he said nothing else. Miles Dion Carver was indicted on October 3, 2023, by a federal grand jury in the Southern District of New York. The indictment charged him on 8 counts. Hobbs Act robbery conspiracy under 18 U.S.C. Section 1951. Use and brandishing of a firearm in furtherance of a violent crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 924. C. Obstruction of justice under 18 U.S.C. Section 1512. And aggravated identity theft under 18 U.S.C. Section 1028A, specifically using his law enforcement credentials to access restricted government systems to plan and facilitate violent felonies. Fletcher Corso argued the access log correlation was circumstantial and that Page's testimony was the product of prosecutorial pressure. He moved to suppress the voice messages on the burner phone. Judge Chin denied the motion. The warrant, she ruled, was precisely calibrated. Trial began at 500 Pearl Street in Manhattan on February 10, 2024. It ran for 10 days. 41 witnesses testified. Lamont Page was on the stand for 2 full days. The August 19, 2022 voice memo was played in full. Carver's voice, the timestamp, the sector coordinates, followed immediately by the dispatch log showing the East 156th Street call coming in 11 minutes later. Bernadette Irby testified during the victim impact phase. She described the surgery. She described explaining to her daughter, who was 7 years old, why her mother's face looked different in photographs taken before August 2022. She said, "I did everything right that night. I was at work. I was doing my job. And the detective who was supposed to protect the people in that building sent those men there. I still don't understand how someone decides to do that." Hector Fuentes testified after her. He had owned his Melrose Avenue bodega for 14 years. His father had opened it in 1987. He said, "I called the police the night they robbed me. An officer came. He was professional. He shook my hand. I never once questioned whether the information that sent those men to my door came from the same precinct. I trusted the system completely. That trust was a mistake." The jury deliberated for 9 hours across 2 days. On February 24, 2024, they returned a verdict of guilty on all 8 counts. Judge Chin sentenced Carver on April 9, 2024. Before the sentence, she addressed him directly. "Detective Carver, What distinguishes your case is not the dollar figure. Though $2.44 million stolen from the communities you were sworn to protect is serious. What distinguishes it is the architecture. You use the infrastructure of this department, the tools built specifically to protect the people of this borough, as a weapon against them. Every query you made on that grid was a deliberate choice. You made 22 of them, over 3 years, with full knowledge of what would follow. This court sentences you accordingly: 300 months, 25 years in federal prison, $2.44 million in restitution, a lifetime bar from law enforcement, government employment, or any position of public trust. Miles Dion Carver was remanded into custody immediately following sentencing and designated to USP Thompson in Thompson, Illinois, a high-security federal facility. His projected release date is 2049. The 40th Precinct held a mandatory integrity briefing the following Monday. 3 months later, the department announced a new policy. Deployment grid queries by task force detectives now require supervisor co-authorization for any sector outside their active case files. The gap Carver had found, measured, and exploited for 3 years was finally closed. 25 years. And the worst part? He was filing police reports for the same robberies he organized. The next case on your right, click it.